Advisory Parks Board meeting. We have a cell phone. Please silence it if you need a call. Please step out. All right, roll call, please.
Davis?
Here.
Millet? Baum?
Here.
Metz?
Here.
Franz? Herman? Hudak?
All of those individuals absent did let us know that it either be late or were out of town or ill, so they'll be excused.
All right. Any comments or concerns about the February 10th meeting minutes?
Move to accept the minutes.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Voice vote, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nay.
All right.
Okay, I think we can move right into new business. Discuss and recommend relocating July 4th fireworks from Miller's Bay to Ames Point.
All right. Pull up the map here. Just a little background for the public and for board members, of course. So the city has contracted with a fireworks provider for nearly the last 20 years. I've been here 15 years, and they have been with the city longer than that. So in this transition and trying to locate another firm to do our fireworks show on July 4th, we did have the discussion internally, and then one of the firms that is going to be working with us on the July 4th fireworks show brought up the idea as well to look at moving the show from Monkey Island, which is obviously shown here on the map. When we use Monkey Island, it is very difficult logistically for city staff, but mainly for the fireworks contractor. Just to give you an idea what happens, typically the city will locate a company to work with to get us a barge that the fireworks contractor could use, typically 2 or 3 days prior to the 4th. So we would have a barge located here that the contractor would then load an ATV on, all his product, and haul it out to the island on that barge. And really they set up most of the shells in this area, and then some of the larger shells out here to give it a little more safety zone into the shoreline. And obviously you can imagine when we've got Oshkosh's show is about a $40,000 show, so there is a lot of product that needs to get out onto the island. Talking with the firm that we've worked with for almost 20 years, last year they logged almost 500 hours for staff to get the product out to the island and get it set up. I don't recall if that was cleanup as well, getting everything off the Monkey Island and back to shore, but basically 500 hours to do that. In addition, park staff, we will go out there once, twice a year, trim the vegetation, weeds, any shrubbery, get that trimmed up so that, you know, the show we could get things set up for, they could get things set up. There's times where we've had to haul in some stone and other product to make sure that they were able to get access out on the island. So as we looked at this, the other concern is based on the standards for fireworks, for each inch of shell that we fire in our show, we need to provide at least 70 to 75 feet of a safety zone. In the past, we've gone up to about a 10-inch shell, and I believe we may have gone up to 12-inch at some years. So when you take a look at the safety zone, that's why the previous contractor would move those larger shells out here, again, to give more safety area to the shoreline. Some of the concern would be, as everybody knows, there's a lot of boats that come out for our show, and I don't think that we did a good enough job of keeping boaters out of that same safety zone. In addition, prior to the show, you know, on July 4th, we have a lot of boats that will tie up to the cruiser docks throughout this area, and then they would be tying up 3-4 deep to each other, and most likely encroaching within that safety zone as well. So that's safety for us, cost, and then again, just the suggestion by Craig and his team with the new contractor that we'll be working with on the show this year, that we took a look at Ames Point. So just to give you a visual, Monkey Island here, Ames Point, and we had a meeting with the fireworks contractor along with our sheriff's department, police department, and fire department. Had discussions about both locations, and once Craig came forward and suggested for him, it's easier access to get out to Ames Point, and I'm just giving you a rough estimate, most likely set up 2/3 of the way out roughly. What we'd be able to do is simply fence off so that people don't have access out to the point. They're able to put their product in a truck right at the beginning of Ames Point and get their product simply out onto the asphalt pathway. As far as spectators to be able to view, our intent or what we would be recommending with our public safety would be to most likely barricade off Oaks Trail up here. So this entire section up off of Oaks Trail would be all pedestrians. This whole section along Menominee Drive would be available for spectators, all the way back down, essentially down into Miller's Bay. The ball diamonds, you would still have plenty of visual for the show. Once we got further down into this area, there's a lot of trees here, so there weren't a lot of people sitting down in here any longer just because you had limited view. There would be some people, but obviously back in here they'd be sitting more for the Monkey Island show. But again, even if they're sitting here or up in the ball diamond area, just to give you an idea for out at Ames Point, they're still going to have a good visual. But back to our thought up on the north end about possibly closing down Oaks Trail is we would provide food trucks throughout the day, similar to what we've done in the last couple of years. So I could foresee a number of food trucks being lined up along Oaks Trail, food trucks all the way down along the pathway throughout this area. So I think safety-wise, when we met with the sheriff's department and our police and fire representatives, they liked this location. They liked the fact of closing this off for strictly pedestrians. In talking with the sheriff's department, this kind of gives you an idea. Again, Ames Point is up here, roughly where the majority of the show would be shot off here. Again, what we'd be looking at is most likely up to 8-inch shells going forward. And so that safety zone is really encompassing the water. It's not, the safety zone doesn't extend into the hard surface of the park, which for spectators is a lot safer. I would envision that in these areas, a lot of these will be big orange buoys that are provided out in the water. And then it's easier for our sheriff's department and our police or fire, if they have a boat out there, to keep boaters outside of, again, this safety zone that we established. We will have, we've met with the sheriff's department, obviously they will be on staff that day, and then we've also had some discussions with our fire department, who also has a boat if they need to be out there. But I think this simplifies it as far as demarking the safety zone, limiting the safety concerns about boats entering that, but also being safe for the people on the shoreline as well.
So what if we do get up to 10-inch shells or 12-inch shells?
Craig, do you want to come up to the microphone and I'll kind of introduce you? But
And then also, we wouldn't cut down any trees on Ames Point.
there's very limited trees out there.
Yeah.
So this is Craig. Craig, last name, I'm sorry.
Hetherington.
And you are with?
I'm with J&M Displays, and I have, I think this is my 18th year shooting fireworks. Certified PGI shooter, helped bring the pyrotechnics to Sunnyview back in 2023. So have a few years of experience under my belt.
So before I let Craig answer the question, Becky had the question, what if we went up to 10 or 12-inch shells? We had that same question for the previous vendor before finding out that they weren't coming back. but basically there's been some change in some safety standards and so forth that makes it a little more difficult for us to get that product. And so maybe Craig, you can touch a little more just because you're the expert, but I
Sure.
don't see us going above an 8-inch shell.
Most likely, I mean, you can still get 10s and 12s. The shipping standards have changed. They have to be packaged pretty heavily because of the accidents when they get put in the conics shipped over from China. So, I mean, I'm not saying there's not available, but we're talking a 10-inch is probably $700 to $900 a piece. A 12 is probably closer to $1,000. So when 40,000 isn't a small number, but when you start shooting $1,000 pieces, it goes very quickly. So most municipality shows throughout the country don't really, besides like the Boston Pops, San Francisco, New York, I'm trying to think, San Diego. Those are about the 4 that stick to my head. I don't even think the Thunder over Louisville goes above 8-inch. You're not going to really typically see many of that. Like with the firework convention, you see a lot more of that because people bring it to play and make it or whatever, but it's cost prohibitive unless you get into the hundreds of thousands of dollars of shows to go up there. So yeah, I just don't see us. We'll probably shoot a couple, maybe a handful of 8s, but most everything's going to be from the 3 to 6-inch variety, with our fronts being single shot Comets, 44 or 50 millimeter type of a device.
So any questions for Craig and I, we'd more than willing to answer those.
Absolutely.
Just pull up the aerial again for you.
Traffic will still be allowed to go up and down Menominee Drive though, just not in the horseshoe.
Correct. Yes.
And in your opinion, does this alter the viewing at all in terms of where people can view it from, how visible it's going to be? I doubt it, but I figured I would just ask.
I think just looking at it that there may actually be more visibility because even though people were sitting up here when we were shooting off the island, a lot of the show is tucked, down to the southwestern
Right,
corner.
right.
Whereas if they were sitting these areas for when it was on Monkey Island, I think they're going to have even a much better view this way, as well as all the people that sat up along Menominee Drive.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, that it might actually improve it, so.
Craig, if there's something that I'm missing safety-wise or what your thoughts are, because obviously you took a look at the site and this was their preferred site, and
Yeah.
basically it came down to a lot of the cost.
Yeah, so I will make a couple comments. One, I didn't know that they logged about 500 hours to the previous vendor. We don't have 500 hours to give to a show. We don't. So, our crew is going to be setting racks here, then setting racks in Sheboygan, setting racks down in Milwaukee, shooting a show in Milwaukee on the 3rd, coming back here on the 4th to shoot this show. We just don't have the logistical bodies to do Monkey Island. So if and I'm not trying to force you guys into doing something, but we wouldn't be able to do that on the 4th of July. We don't have the manpower. We shoot over 550 shows just on the 4th, and we are just slammed with bodies and equipment and trucks. So that's where I kind of came up with this. All of our equipment comes on pallets. So with the rider truck, you have the lift gate, everything can go down with pallet. We can pallet jack right down that blacktop path, which makes life so easy. We do that in Brown Deer. We do that in Sheboygan. It works awesome. It speeds everything up, and it saves the wear and tear on everybody's body from lifting things and picking and moving. Like with Monkey Island, they would take it off the truck, put it on this barge, bring it over, take it off, set it up, then tear it down, put it back on the barge, bring it over, take it off, put it back on the truck, and stack it. That's a lot of work, and you're paying for all of that, and you're not getting the best show that you could by doing something like that. And with the Ames Point, with being able to choke that off and getting people out of there, it's way more safe. We can control it ourselves for the most part of like, hey, these people aren't supposed to be here, and fence it off, and we're kind of cocooned into this island. And I just, from looking at it, from being out there walking it, yeah, there's some trees, but there's a lot of like open swatch, which is great for like setting up our fronts. We can kind of stagger them through the whole thing and then get the body kind of behind it and have like kind of like a walking path through the middle, which is really kind of nice. You'd be able to see it from both sides. I really think this is the preferred location. And I talked to Nina at Festival Foods, and she absolutely agrees that this is it just seems like a no-brainer to us.
I'm glad, Craig, you touched on it a little bit as far as visibility, because I'm thinking about the number of boats that come out for our show. And when you're out on the boats, if you're not in here early and tucked in on the cruiser docks, the show again is getting fired here. Of course, it's going up in the air, but I think having it out here, any type of lower shell,
Yep.
I just think the boaters are going to love it a lot more having it out off the point as well.
Yeah, I think you appeal to more of a crowd up there than you did previously. That's just from my expertise of what we've been doing for years. I mean, down in Milwaukee, the lakefront show, we used to do it on 3 barges out in the breakwater, and there'd be boats out and in the crowd, and I mean, it looked great from both sides. You're appealing to more people than just where they're stuck in that area, I guess, if you will. But again, it's not my decision, and I'm not, so whatever questions you have to me, and you guys are the ones that have to make the decision and deal with the fallout. But, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I'm not sure that we could house Monkey Island on the 4th.
And that's a good point as well, because I think what we're finding, and Craig can attest to this, but Al, the gentleman that's been firing our show for almost the last 20 years, he's retired, and there's nobody coming up to take over a lot of these shows. And if they are, they're very limited crew size. And so, again, to get a large enough crew together to put on a show like this on an island, and the amount of setup and so forth plays into it.
We're having a really hard time with manpower. The CDL rules just changed. You can't just take the test anymore. You have to go take a class. So if you're not grandfathered in, finding drivers is a problem. And trying to find people that are willing. I mean, we're paying people, but trying to get them to give up their 4th of July because they want to go to the barbecue and hang out with their family and all that. And it's an entire day. Like, it's 8, 9 in the morning till midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, depending on, like, you're burning the candle, and try to get people to do that. It's a problem, and this is going to be a problem going forward, and especially next year being 4th of July being on a Saturday and the 250th of this country. We're already worried about logistical, and festival is they're already pigeonholing me into, can you do it next year on that thing? And which we are absolutely, like, if we take a show on this year, absolutely we'll do it next year. But like, I mean, if there's somebody new that wants to come to the company and wants a show, if it's not 6 figures, we're not interested, because we're not sure we can even figure out how to do it. This is going to be a problem. Like, and I use Nina and Menasha as an example. What they don't understand is at some point in time, one of them, they're going to either have to join forces, or one of them are going to be left out looking in, because all of you can't have shows there's just not enough bodies.
Right.
So, again, staff is recommending that we relocate it to Ames Point for all the reasons that we're talking about. This would go to the council for their final decision. And just to kind of give you a little background, that I should have looked at the year, but there was a year when Hazel Street was under reconstruction, and we moved the fireworks down to the Pioneer Island. What we did at that time was took it to the Common Council for approval as well for that relocation. And I think it also, obviously the public needs to hear about it, and anybody that lives up in this area might want to have some more input. And so this board will make their recommendation, and it'll go to the council for final approval on the location. So.
Any other questions for?
Thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I will move that we recommend this to council to relocate the fireworks to Ames Point.
Second.
Davis.
Aye.
Plum.
Aye.
Metz.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Craig.
All right, moving on to Pickard Park.
All right.
This is fun. I love Pickard.
So in your packet, we did provide a copy of the Pickard Park Master Plan.
Say that fast.
Pickard Park, yes. I want to give you an idea and the public an idea where Pickard Park is at, just in case you aren't aware. So this is 9th Ave, going out west of the city. Here's Clairville Road, and this is Pickard Estates out here. This is an older photo. There's actually more homes out here currently. But as part of the city's subdivision ordinance, we did require, this board and the council required Pickard Park developers to dedicate some parkland based on the number of new residents. So they dedicated this parkland back in 2018, I believe. Essentially, it's about 1.51 acres. It's currently an open green area that we mow as a grass area right now. As we state in the document, we did have a couple of meetings with the neighbors out there last summer and fall. We'll get to the dates when Rebecca talks a little bit more about the process. But basically, we got their input on what they'd like to see in their neighborhood park. And in September, we brought forward 2 conceptual plans, and there was discussion at that September meeting, things that they liked about each of the concept plans, and basically we melded what they liked from both plans into the master plan. I did share the contact that I have out in the neighborhood. I did share this document with him last week when the board was receiving it as well, and I invited anybody from the neighborhood if they had any questions or comments to show up, and obviously there's nobody here, but what I want to do is have Rebecca from Rutler Corporation come up and talk process, and Rebecca as well as John from Rutler Corporation were part of the meetings and coordination of this master plan.
Good evening. Like Ray said, my name is Rebecca with Rutler Corporation. And Rutler Corporation is a site design, engineering, construction management, and survey firm. You might remember me from a few months ago, probably early fall, when we finished up the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. Well, during that, in concurrent with that plan, we were looking at Pickard Park master plan as well. So, actually, where's the? Oh, okay, you're gonna do it.
I mean, otherwise, here.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you. Travel in the right direction. Okay. So let's look. So Pickard Park, as Ray mentioned, is in the Pickard Estates subdivision. It is 1.51 acres. Rutler Corporation surveyed the site as part of this master plan process. And as Ray also mentioned, it's mowed, it's generally level. There's roughly a 2-foot difference in elevation across the property. The slopes are gentle, as you would probably guess, in the 1% to 2% range. The lowest point is at the top center, where an inlet's already been placed and connected to storm sewer pipe. The higher points are at the west end and the south end, and you can, excuse me, see the red plus shape there for those. Access is either by car with parking along the street or by foot utilizing some sidewalks. The developer does plan, I understand, to install sidewalks along the north side of the site in the near future. As far as utilities, I mentioned that storm sewer inlet on the north side. There's also water, sanitary, and storm connections at the northern side of the western end. There's electric, gas, fiber, and water at the far east side of the site. And I believe 2 solar-powered light poles have been placed along the northern boundary. As far as wetlands, the WDNR, Wisconsin DNR Surface Water Data Viewer does not show any wetlands on the site. It does show some wetland indicator hatches on some areas. I don't think the purple came through real well there. So a wetland delineation might be required, but I really don't anticipate them finding anything there. So our next step was to hold a public input meeting, and our first one was held on April 30, 2024. Over about 20 people attended that meeting. After a brief PowerPoint presentation, we opened the floor to a question and answer brainstorming session led out by John Kinnear with Rettler Corporation, the Oshkosh Parks Director and Assistant Parks Director, and I was taking notes. So at the end, the entire group was in agreement that the following items listed on there are priorities. They wanted a playground, some walking paths, some sort of open shelter, a seating, a green space, trees, bag toss or some sort of outdoor game for adults, some lighting, and some multi-use courts. So based on that input, Rettler Corporation went ahead and put together 2 different arrangements of these amenities to present at the next input meeting along with some rough cost estimates. And there is concept 1. In concept 1, there are 2 entrances to the park. There's a main entrance on the northeast corner with bike racks and a park sign, and then a smaller entrance on the west. So next to the main entrance, we have bag toss with some seating for observers and a storage area for equipment, smaller bag toss type equipment. There's an accessible walking path with lighting along it. There's landscape buffers along the south and west side to kind of near where residential properties might be. There's open space in the center for informal play. There's a poured-in-place surfaced play area with a seat wall, bench seating, and a cantilever shade structure. There's a drinking fountain. We tried to keep that kind of close to where the water came into the site. And there's a multi-use court with tennis and pickleball. Concept 2, move things over a little bit. Here we have 3 entrances instead of a single main entrance, but the park sign would remain on that northeast corner. Moving west, you have bag toss next to bike racks and some seating, and then the accessible walking path with lighting. We have the landscape buffer again along the residential property areas. You can see along the south and the west there. Poured-in-place playground is in the center. It has a seat wall, some bench seating, and a drinking fountain. It moved a little bit east there. And there's also an open shelter there with picnic table seating and a nearby drinking fountain. The open green space got a little bit smaller, but it's still there. And there's a basketball court with some partial fencing to keep the balls off the road. And
So is there no pickleball on the concept number 2?
correct. That is true. So we brought these 2, and these were sort of laying out some amenities, and we wanted to hear what do we like, what do we not like. We want this from concept 1 or this from concept 2. And so the second input meeting was held September 25, 2024, and they strongly favored concept 2 with some modifications. There were fewer attendees at this meeting, but we got a lot of good input and a lot of feedback there. Everyone was pretty engaged. The Parks Department then suggested a few changes as well, and we came up with the master plan as it is. They wanted to keep the 3 entrances. They liked the loop options for phasing and also for coming back up. Maybe you just want to walk a shorter loop and come back. Then we have the bag toss, bike racks, and the seating, kind of similar to concept 2, the path with the lighting. The landscape buffer, of course, remains. The poured-in-place playground or surfaced playground in the center. They liked the open shelter and drinking fountain next to that, and they liked where it's the location of the shelter so that they could keep an eye on children playing in the green space or the playground, both. Just turn and look. So we have the green space again for informal play. Here we have the multi-use court, tennis and pickleball on the far west, and then we have a half court of basketball just across the path there. And then also in the works is a discussion on rentable game equipment and lockers on there. So are there any questions on that section, or just continue here to the costs? All right, well, here's an overview, kind of a quick summary. Earthwork, we're estimating about $183,000, almost $184,000. That would include mobilization, so getting all the earthwork equipment there. There would be general earthwork for grading, stripping, and screening, so you take the topsoil off so you can shape underneath. There's going to be some grading. Because it's really flat, you're going to want to raise certain things like playgrounds so that the water runs where you want it to run. There's going to be a little bit of that going on too. We have an excavation below subgrade allowance in case we run into a pocket of poor soils. That also includes erosion control, and then afterward, there's going to be seeding and site restoration after all that earthwork to get that grass again. Utilities, $141,800. That would include stormwater management. That would also include electrical, so getting the service to the site electrical is just expensive. And then the wiring, this doesn't include the fixtures, that's further down, but this would be the wiring and conduit, potentially just getting stuff set up for all those lights. Also sanitary and water utilities to the drinking fountain. The walks, as shown in concrete, would be roughly $62,800, including the dense graded base underneath. The playground is $274,000 roughly. That includes the play equipment, that port-in-place rubberized surface, and then the stone underneath for drainage. Also, we would include a 4-inch under drain so that water never collects in that. Helps increase the lifespan of that surfacing. And also a concrete thickened edge around it, and then that number also includes that concrete plaza nearby it as well. Just a little bit larger because of that. Bag toss, $16,650. That is the precast concrete bag toss boards, a concrete viewing area, and a rental kiosk or smart locker for the equipment. The multi-use court on the west, about $88,550. That would be asphalt, base course, acrylic surfacing, the saw cutting, the tennis court netting and posts, some vinyl coated chain link fence because it's so close to the street there, 4-inch under drain, and storm connections for that as well. Then the basketball court just across the path is roughly $39,320. That would be the hot mix asphalt and base, the acrylic surfacing, the striping, the saw cutting, the post-mounted basketball hoop fencing, and then again the under drain and storm connections for that. And then I have a category buildings and miscellaneous at $247,900. Benches, seat walls, the open shelter itself, and then these all include, I should add, installation as well. And then these numbers were taken off of estimates and bidding that we've gotten for doing real projects in the last year or two. So that one also has open shelter, site furniture allowance, the drinking fountain, the bike racks, the lighting fixtures themselves in this one, a park sign, and some landscaping allowance for those buffers as well. And then we usually conclude a 10% contingency. We have $5,000 for geotechnical borings. And then the project soft costs includes permitting, construction documents, and then depending, you might want construction observation or construction management and other items in that category, which brings us to the total of $1,264,100 for a total. There are phasing options for that project, though. You can look at completing certain parts before others is one option for that as well. So that is a really quick general overview of the Pickard Park Master Plan.
So is concrete cheaper than paving, blacktop?
No, not initially. You're looking at a lifespan difference. Concrete will be a lot more expensive at first, but the lifespan is a lot longer. You don't have the same cracking, and then you have to go through and patch them, and then eventually you need to replace the asphalt sooner than the concrete. But for the short term, that is an option, yes. Concrete is also good for smaller areas if you're going to be, if the machinery for the asphalt can't really get in there very well. So there's some pros and cons on that one.
And those are the types of things that we'll take a look at when we get into the actual construction, if one is a little more cost effective than the other.
Yeah, I would anticipate some minor changes during construction depending on soil types and small things you run into at that point, or maybe the stormwater, kind of where you are running it and small things like that. There. Any other questions?
Ray, was this earmarked in the CIP?
We have $350,000 earmarked for starting to develop this park.
Okay.
So it's in this year's CIP. I believe it was part of the ARPA remaining funds that were approved at the end of last year for some of these projects. So.
Okay. So a combination of ARPA and CIP funds.
Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
So I believe we had 350 last year for Pickard Park. But because we weren't going to get to it in time for those ARPA allocation, we repurposed that 350 and then going through the budget process through the CIP. So this would be borrowed dollars for the project now.
Okay.
But it is in 2025.
Okay.
And so if you take a look at that 350 might not seem like a lot, and I think Rebecca, the top priority for the group was a playground structure, if I recall correctly.
Correct, that's what I have.
So, you know, at a $1.2 million total cost, we're looking at about a quarter of the project getting done with the 350 roughly. And that's, I would say, pretty consistent with if we're going to phase things in, we start taking it apart in pieces. And depending on available funding, depending on other CIP projects that this board will be looking at, you know, moving things around potentially and funding something a little differently. But really it's going to become funding availability over the next couple of years to keep phasing it in. So I would see this, if the board does recommend it to the council and it gets approved, that we would start working on getting the site prepared for playground structure, which we would get proposals for and bring that for approval. So,
Okay.
so that would be the intent. And then we just, part of the CIP, again, start budgeting for the remainder of the phases.
Sure, and just to follow up, in terms of the playground equipment, it's fairly expensive. How does that comp to other recent playground equipment that we've purchased?
We've been budgeting about $250,000.
Okay, so that's just a going price.
Correct. The big cost is the pour in place surfacing.
Sure.
And we've gone to the pour in place over the last 8 to 10 years, I think, and a lot of that is, again, there's a larger upfront cost, but then there's not the annual cost of having to come in and put more mulch down,
Right.
The playground safety mulch. It's not just mulch that we could chip up at the shop or anything.
Right,
It's
yeah, yeah.
specialized mulch for playgrounds.
Right, that's liability
Yeah,
concern.
correct.
Okay.
And it's safer, it's easier for strollers, walkers, more accessible.
ADA, yeah, I was gonna say ADA accessibility is a
It's
little
ADA
better with that.
compliant. Okay, that's good.
And so what are the bag toss? They're actually concrete bag toss?
There's the boards, instead of hauling the actual boards, they're concrete. They're really heavy, they're permanent there. They look really nice. I've seen them done here in Stevens Point. We did them in Saramore Park, is what it got renamed to. But no one leaves with them, they're there.
And the other
They're
thing that
pretty permanent.
We've talked about as part of this process and other sites, if you're familiar with the kayak locker down at Miller's
Yeah.
Bay, that company is now coming out with smaller lockers where you can use your debit or credit card to basically rent to use the bag toss. So we could have one of those machines there, we get some revenue off of it, but it's also things that should not disappear because your card is tied to the use of those products.
Sure.
And so, you know, if you live in the neighborhood or you want to go out there, you can take your own bags and play.
Right.
Or the option will be there
Yeah.
for people to be on site, and so same type of concept.
I like the multi-use courts. Pickleball's becoming more and more
Oh,
a
shall we go
really
back?
involved sport, so the more we have it, the better. So.
Yeah, they were pretty vocal on the multi-use court out there, again, for a variety of age groups.
Mhm.
I think it looks great. Looks like a fun park.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Rebecca? Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think this is really important for future development, especially on the west side, some of these newer, less mature subdivisions. This is an important piece of quality of life for them, so I like it. Good job.
Good. We would like to get action to the common council for approval as well, and it also goes to the plan commission because they review and recommend approval of all the master plans as well. So it'll go plan commission and then common council.
I'll move to approve
A second.
Davis?
Aye.
Tom?
it. Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Rebecca.
All right. Ray, you have all the updates.
It's just me. I let everybody else have the meeting off. So just a quick update on the Menominee Park amusement train operations. We are currently working on getting the train up and running. We're doing some work in-house on the cars and so forth. There's certain things we have to contract out, and then there's other materials that we need to get purchased. So we're working towards that to make sure that it's up and running when we plan to open in May. Just as a kind of a prelude, there have been discussions with a couple of the community members about potential long-term, not for a track train, but the option of looking into a train that is actually on land, and some different options that are out there. We're continuing to look at that with a number of potential partners and some potential funders of something similar to that, in addition to a few other potential amenities along Menominee Park in that amusement area as well as inside the zoo. So only had a preliminary meeting with that group, and so I expect that we'll come back to this group with something a little more concrete on when we have the information a little more in hand. But as of right now, the direction was we're going to get the track train going for this year, and that's what we are working on. So, update on Quarry Park Master Plan development. This is a, hopefully you're familiar with where Quarry Park is, but due to the former landfill and the methane gas issues on the site, it's a very sensitive site for us to take a look at for doing much underground or excavation out there. There is a newer neighborhood association around Quarry Park, and they worked with the city planning staff, our department, and the council to get some neighborhood funding approved to do a master plan for Quarry Park. So we are in the process of working with the neighborhood association on that. We do have a meeting set up with Rutler Corporation is helping us with that master plan as well. So we're going to be meeting with Rutler Corporation, DNR staff, as well as some of our engineering staff that are very familiar with the site. We want to know up front what we can and can't do on the site. So we're going to start that process and work closely with the neighborhood association on developing that plan, and ultimately bring that to this board for a recommendation as well. An update on the parkland dedication and fee in lieu of parkland dedication revisions. Just like we talked about out at Pickard Park, the subdivision code or subdivision ordinance requires new developments where we have parkland that is shown in our corp that we need future parkland. When that area is developed, we work with the developer just like we did at Pickard Estates, and work at parkland dedication in the neighborhood or fees in lieu of that parkland. What we had started to do last fall with planning staff is work on updating that subdivision ordinance. Again, there's two pieces to it. There's the parkland dedication piece, and then the fee in lieu of, if that's the choice we would go with. In addition, we started looking at the potential of an impact fee, which would help us for development of those sites as well, to get some additional funding that way. There's been some staffing turnover at the planning division. So what we are doing is working with our consultant to keep moving on the fee in lieu of parkland dedication along with the parkland dedication ordinance section. And we're close to having a proposal for that, which we'll be bringing to this board in the near future as well, so that you can take a look at it. So basically it's updating potentially the amount that is paid in lieu of land dedication, which hasn't been revised as long as I've been here, so more than 15 years, as well as how much area if we choose the parkland dedication. So we've been taking a look at comparables in the area as well. So stay tuned for that one. And then just a quick update on Seaward Trail Road reconstruction in Menominee Park. Seaward Trail is, I should have pulled it up on the Google or GIS, but essentially Seaward Trail, when you enter into Menominee Park off of Merritt and go to the left in front of the Lakefly Cafe parking lot for the zoo, the road that goes along the west side of the zoo all the way up to the boat launch, that is Seaward Trail. If you drive there now, you're going to see why it needs to be reconstructed. It is in terrible condition, and I think now that we have Pratt Trail redone, it's even more noticeable. So we do have funding. This was in 2024 CIP, I believe, where we started working with our engineering staff. They are currently designing that project. We have been in contact with UW-Milwaukee archaeology staff. They've done some test digs out there. Being further away from the waterway, we don't expect that we're going to be having many archaeological issues, but we will be working closely with them whenever we're doing some excavating, and we're going to try to limit the depth again just to try to avoid some of those issues. So anyways, we're designing it now. I would expect we're going to be hopefully putting it out for bid soon, because the anticipated schedule for that project, we originally talked about starting mid-August, so after summer's completed, but then having it done by the third week of October for our Zuluing Boo events out at the zoo. So fingers crossed everything goes well with that design. So it would include the entire roadway plus the parking area for the zoo. But that would really complete that whole loop of the road system in Menominee Park, which is, again, very well needed. So that's where we're on in some of those major projects.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions, comments, concerns for?
I guess only one thing I would have is, now that ice fishing season has concluded, do we have any traffic analytics for that? Like just how many people came and, to the events that we had in Menominee Park and then out in the lake itself? Or no worries if you don't know them off the top of your head. We can chat offline about it.
Yeah, we won't have anything tracking wise, but I do know in talking to the ice fishing groups that they've had some really good attendance at their events. I know just watching the news and being out there for sturgeon spearing, again, not having sturgeon spearing very good ice conditions for the last couple of years, I think they were all very well attended.
Good.
Yeah, I know Battle on Bago was one of their record attendance for number of attendees at least. So I guess that's about as what I can give you as far as what I'm hearing and what I saw. So,
Cool. Appreciate it.
yeah, ice conditions, even for us, the skating rink inside the zoo on the lagoon, I think Jenny shared that we finally got like 7 weeks of ice skating out of
Oh, wow.
the rink, which in the past, if we were getting 2 to 3 weeks based on weather and ice conditions, we were pretty lucky. So ice conditions this year were a heck of a lot better than they have been. So that program was very well attended as well, and ice skating for us. So.
Great. All right, well, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.